For 42 years, I looked at that jewelry box every single day. It sat on my dresser, its mahogany surface polished to a mirror shine, brass corners gleaming in the morning light. Inside lay our inheritance, pieces passed down from my husband William's mother and from her mother before that. $250,000 worth of history, love, and legacy. Monday morning, the box was there. Tuesday morning, it was gone. Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, stood in my doorway with that practiced look of concern, her manicured hand resting on the frame. "Maybe forgetfulness is starting, Mom," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It happens at your age." It wasn't forgetfulness. The weight of her words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I could feel them seeping into my skin, trying to convince me of a reality that didn't exist. My hands, weathered by 73 years of living, trembled not from age, but from the volcanic rage building beneath my carefully maintained composure. This woman, who had been in my family for only 3 years, was attempting to rewrite my own narrative, to paint me as a confused old woman who couldn't be trusted with her own memories. I am Margaret Chen, and my mind remains a fortress of clarity. The years I spent as a tax attorney in Indianapolis had honed my memory into a precise instrument. I could recall obscure tax codes from the 1980s, remember the exact placement of semicolons in thousand-page documents, and recite my clients' social security numbers from cases closed decades ago. The human remaining doesn't simply forget a $250,000 inheritance overnight. It doesn't misplace family heirlooms that have been touched, cleaned, and cherished every single morning for 4 decades. Someone had taken them, and the thief was standing in my doorway, wearing Chanel No. 5 and a counterfeit expression of worry. The pieces in that box weren't mere decorative objects to be sold at market value. Each one carried the weight of a woman's story, a life lived in defiance of its era's limitations. The Art Deco platinum bracelet had adorned my husband's grandmother's wrist as she signed her first business loan in 1932, when banks barely acknowledged women as financial entities. The pearl necklace, luminous and perfectly matched, had been a graduation gift to William's mother when she became one of the first Black nurses in Indianapolis, achievement that came with death threats and burned crosses on her lawn. The emerald ring, which William had given me after our first son's birth, represented 6 months of his overtime hours, secret second jobs, and skipped lunches. 23 pieces in total, each meticulously cataloged in my insurance documents, photographed from every angle, their stories written in my journal with the same precision I once used for legal briefs. Rebecca had entered our family like a perfectly orchestrated invasion. She appeared at Michael's company picnic 3 years ago, her pharmaceutical smile never wavering, her laugh timed to perfection. Within 6 months, she had transformed my younger son from a thoughtful, independent man into someone I barely recognized. The changes were subtle at first: missed Sunday dinners, shortened phone calls, awkward silences where easy conversation once flowed. Then came the suggestions disguised as concern. Perhaps I shouldn't be driving at night anymore. Maybe managing my finances was becoming too complex. Wouldn't it be easier if they helped with the house maintenance? Each suggestion was delivered with a spoonful of honey, but I could taste the arsenic beneath. Rebecca was playing a long game, and I had become her primary target. I watched her eyes during family gatherings, saw how they tracked across my home like a scanner, cataloging the 19th century oil paintings, the Persian rugs, the Tiffany lamps. Her fingers would ghost over surfaces, and I could practically see her calculating market values, auction estimates, liquidation timelines. That Tuesday evening, they arrived together, a united front of fabricated concern. Michael sat in William's old leather chair, a liberty he would never have taken when his father was alive. Rebecca perched beside him on the ottoman, her hand possessively placed on his knee, her engagement ring catching the light. The ring I had given them from William's mother's collection now felt like a traitor on her finger. Michael cleared his throat multiple times before speaking, a tell from his childhood when he was about to lie. The words that emerged were not his own. They had Rebecca's fingerprints all over them. He spoke about safety, about the challenges of aging, about the wisdom of considering alternatives. Each word was carefully chosen to avoid direct accusations while planting seeds of doubt about my competence. Rebecca nodded along, occasionally adding her own observations about how she'd noticed me struggling with simple tasks, how I'd seemed confused during recent visits, how perhaps it was time to think about my best interests. The performance was almost admirable in its coordination. They had rehearsed this conversation, probably in their BMW on the drive over, Rebecca coaching Michael on which words to emphasize, which concerns to express. But they had made a critical error in their calculation. They assumed that age had dulled my instincts, that loneliness had made me desperate enough to accept any narrative that kept them close. They didn't know about the security system I'd installed 6 months earlier, or about the pattern of small thefts I'd been documenting, or about the conversation I'd overheard during Thanksgiving when Rebecca told her sister on the phone that she was playing the long game with the old lady's money. The cameras had been installed by a company that specialized in discreet surveillance for elder abuse cases. The technician, a young woman named Amy, who had seen too many grandparents robbed by their own families, had hidden them with an artist's precision. Smoke detectors, wall clocks, decorative figurines, even the brass corners of picture frames. Each contained a tiny eye that recorded in high definition, motion-activated and cloud-backed. The system had cost me $8,000, a small price for the truth it would reveal. That night, after their performance of concern, I sat in my study with my laptop, accessing the footage with passwords I'd memorized rather than written down. I scrolled through Monday's recordings, watching myself move through my morning routine. Tea at 6 a.m., medications at 6:30, local news at 7. Then came my doctor's appointment at 2 p.m., the one Rebecca had called to remind me about 3 times, expressing such touching concern that I might forget. The house stood empty, silent, waiting. At 2:47 p.m., the back door camera activated. Rebecca entered using the spare key, moving with the confidence of someone who had done this before. She wore medical gloves from her sample bag and carried a large Louis Vuitton tote, empty except for a velvet jewelry roll. The journey to my bedroom took her 30 seconds. No hesitation, no wrong turns. She knew exactly where she was going. The bedroom camera captured everything in excruciating detail. The way she opened the jewelry box with practiced ease, having studied its mechanism during her many helpful visits to assist me with cleaning. The methodical manner in which she examined each piece, holding them to the light, checking stamps and maker's marks with a jeweler's loupe she'd brought. She had done her research, knowing exactly which pieces held the highest value. The Art Deco bracelet went into her bag first, then the pearl necklace, the emerald ring, a pair of Victorian diamond earrings, a Cartier watch from the 1940s. She left behind the everyday pieces, my simple gold hoops, a silver charm bracelet Michael had made in elementary school, William's college class ring. These she scattered strategically across the dresser and throughout the room, creating a scene of confusion. The most damning moment came when she pulled out her phone and photographed the staged scene, muttering to herself as she did. The audio was clear enough to hear her say, "Perfect, she's finally losing it." She then spent another 5 minutes placing jewelry in bizarre locations, behind books, under scarves, in the medicine cabinet, places where a confused elderly woman might hide things and forget. 13 minutes total. $250,000 stolen in less time than it takes to brew a proper pot of tea. I made multiple copies of the footage that night, my legal training taking over. USB drives hidden in various locations, uploads to 3 different cloud services, an encrypted email to my attorney James Morrison with strict instructions not to open unless requested. Then I began my own performance, one that would make Rebecca's look like amateur theater. Wednesday morning arrived with freezing rain, the kind that turns Indianapolis into a crystal prison. Rebecca called at exactly 8 a.m., her voice pitched with perfectly calibrated concern. I answered on the 4th ring, adding a tremor to my voice that wasn't entirely manufactured, the tremor of pure rage contained. I told her about finding some pieces scattered in strange places, expressing confusion and distress. I could hear her smile through the phone, the satisfaction of a con artist whose mark was falling perfectly into place. She suggested that perhaps Michael and she should help manage my valuables for safekeeping. Her tone was so sincere, so loving, that for a moment I understood how Michael had been fooled. Sociopaths often make the best actors. The next 3 days became an elaborate dance of deception. I played the role of the declining elder with increasing commitment. I called Michael twice, asking if he'd seen my reading glasses when they were on my head. I mentioned to Rebecca that I'd found my wallet in the refrigerator, a lie that made her practically purr with satisfaction. I even staged a minor confusion at the grocery store, asking the clerk if she'd seen my daughter, then correcting myself to say daughter-in-law, all within earshot of Rebecca's friend who worked in the pharmacy department. Each performance added another layer to their narrative, but unknown to them, I was building my own case. Every text message where Rebecca expressed concern was screenshot and saved. Every conversation where Michael mentioned my declining faculties was recorded through my phone. The paper trail they were creating to justify taking control of my assets was simultaneously becoming evidence of their conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Friday afternoon found me in the offices of Morrison, Klein and Associates, where James Morrison had been my colleague, my competitor, and eventually my friend for over 30 years. His office still smelled of old leather and bourbon, though he'd quit drinking a decade ago. I placed the USB drive on his desk with the same gravity I once reserved for delivering crucial evidence in million-dollar tax fraud cases. James watched the footage in silence, his expression darkening with each passing second. When it finished, he removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes, a gesture I remembered from our courtroom days when he was processing something particularly vile. "Margaret," he said finally, "this is grand larceny, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, and about 6 other felonies I could name without even trying." "I know," I replied. "I need you to prepare the police report, but not file it until Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Why the delay?" "Saturday night is Rebecca's company Christmas party. She's receiving the top sales award for the Midwest region. The CEO is flying in specially for the presentation. She's bought a new dress for the occasion, Versace, $3,000. I saw the receipt in her car." James leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You always did know how to maximize impact. What's the real play here, Margaret?" I outlined my plan with the precision of a chess grandmaster explaining a 16-move checkmate. James took notes, occasionally nodding, sometimes wincing at the particularly ruthless elements. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me with something between admiration and concern. "This will destroy them," he said simply. "No," I corrected. "They destroyed themselves. I'm simply providing the evidence." Saturday arrived unseasonably warm, the December sun melting the previous day's ice into deceptive puddles that looked shallow but weren't. Rebecca and Michael arrived at 5 p.m., Rebecca wearing the Versace dress that hung on her frame like liquid gold. She air-kissed my cheek, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and betrayal. The dinner I'd prepared was elaborate: roasted duck with cherry reduction, garlic mashed potatoes, Brussels sprouts with bacon. Each dish was something I knew they loved, a final feast before the reckoning. We ate with the artificial politeness of enemies observing a ceasefire, conversation flowing around the elephant in the room like water around a boulder. Rebecca couldn't resist talking about the party, her voice bright with anticipation. She described the venue, the guest list, the importance of the award for her career trajectory. Michael nodded along, playing the proud husband, though I noticed he avoided meeting my eyes. Perhaps some vestige of conscience remained in my son, buried beneath the avalanche of his wife's influence. As we cleared the table, Rebecca helping with uncharacteristic enthusiasm, I initiated the final act. "I've been thinking about what you both said," I began, my voice carefully modulated to sound tired but resolved. "About my valuables, my situation." They both froze, Rebecca's hand suspended over the plate she was scraping, Michael half risen from his chair. I want to sign power of attorney, I continued, for everything. Finances, property, medical decisions. You're right, I need help. Rebecca's eyes lit up with a greed so naked it was almost obscene. Michael's expression was more complex, relief mixed with something that might have been shame if he still possessed the capacity for it. "Mom, that's wonderful," Rebecca breathed, abandoning the dishes to come and embrace me. Her arms felt like snakes constricting around my shoulders. "We just want what's best for you." "I've already had James Morrison draw up the papers," I said, extracting myself from her embrace and retrieving a folder from the sideboard. "But there's one condition." The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I want the jewelry back first," I said calmly. "All of it. I want to see everything one more time, to say goodbye properly. Then it's yours to manage." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, counting down the seconds to their destruction. Rebecca's face underwent a transformation that would have been fascinating if it weren't so repulsive. Surprise morphing into calculation, then fear, then back to manufactured confusion. "But Mom," she said, her voice catching slightly, "the jewelry is missing. You know that." "No, dear," I replied, pulling out my phone. "It's not." The video was already cued. I set the phone on the table and pressed play. The quality was exceptional, every detail crystal clear. Rebecca entering my home. Rebecca putting on gloves. Rebecca stealing my inheritance, piece by piece. Michael's sharp intake of breath was the only sound as we watched. Rebecca had gone completely still, her face draining of color until the expensive makeup stood out like paint on a corpse. When the video showed her photographing the staged scene and saying she's finally losing it, Michael stood up so abruptly his chair crashed backwards onto the hardwood floor. "What the hell is this?" His voice was barely above a whisper, all his manufactured concern evaporating. Rebecca's response was instantaneous and vicious. "It's fake! She's setting me up! This old bitch!" "The video has been authenticated by a digital forensics expert," I interrupted smoothly. "Metadata intact, timestamp verified, no evidence of editing." James Morrison has copies, as does Detective Patricia Huang of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. The facade shattered completely. Rebecca lunged across the table, trying to grab my phone, but I had anticipated this. I stepped back, letting her sprawl across the dinner table, knocking over the gravy boat, her Versace dress now decorated with cherry reduction. "I've been thinking," I said, my voice carrying the authority of every courtroom I'd ever commanded. "Option 1, return every single piece by tomorrow morning 8 a.m. sharp. Sign a full confession, which James will keep sealed unless you ever contact me or my family again. Divorce Michael immediately, no contest, no alimony, no division of assets. Leave Indiana and never return." Rebecca was breathing hard, her chest heaving, mascara beginning to run in black rivers down her cheeks. "Option 2, I continued, the police report gets filed Monday morning at 9 a.m. Your company receives a copy of the video within the hour. The pharmaceutical board gets a copy. Your Instagram followers, all 12,000 of them, get a copy. Grand larceny over $250,000 is a Class B felony in Indiana. 6 to 20 years, Rebecca. And that's before we add elder abuse charges." She turned to Michael, desperation replacing rage. "Baby, please, you know me. I would never." "I just watched you do it," Michael said, his voice hollow. "I watched you steal from my mother." The most devastating moment came next. Rebecca's mask finally, completely fell away. "She doesn't need those things," she screamed. "She's old. We deserve them more. You said so yourself, Michael. You said once she was gone, we'd finally have what we deserve." The words hung in the air like a confession at a witch trial. My son, my baby boy, the child I'd sung to sleep and whose fever dreams I'd soothed, had been complicit all along. The betrayal was complete, absolute, and somehow not surprising. I had suspected, but suspecting and knowing are different creatures entirely. "Get out," I said quietly, "both of you. 8 a.m. tomorrow, every piece, or I call the police." Rebecca ran from the house, her designer heels clicking frantically on the hardwood. Michael stood frozen, looking lost, looking like the little boy who'd once broken my favorite vase and tried to hide the pieces. "Mom, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I cut him off. "You meant every word. You just didn't mean to get caught." He left without another word, the front door closing with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the empty house. At 7:43 a.m. Sunday morning, a cardboard box appeared on my doorstep. No knock, no doorbell, just the soft thud of a delivery. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper like newborns, were all 23 pieces. A note in Rebecca's handwriting said simply, "I'm sorry." She wasn't sorry for the theft. She was sorry for the exposure. The divorce papers were filed within the week. Rebecca disappeared to Arizona, according to the last update I received. Michael tried calling 17 times over the next month. I never answered. Some bridges, once burned, illuminate truths better left in darkness. But the jewelry story doesn't end in a safety deposit box or another locked drawer. I donated every piece to the Indianapolis Museum of Art, with detailed provenance for each item. They created an exhibit, Generations, a legacy of women's stories. School children visit now, learning about the women who wore these pieces, who built lives and careers when the world told them they couldn't. Last month, the curator mentioned something interesting. Rebecca had visited the exhibit, not knowing I donated the pieces. She stood for an hour in front of the Art Deco bracelet, reading about William's grandmother, the woman who'd built a business empire during the Depression, who'd employed dozens of women when no one else would hire them. She seemed upset, the curator told me. She kept saying, "This should have been mine." I smiled at that. "No," I replied. "It was never meant to be owned. It was meant to inspire." The cameras remain in my house, their red lights invisible but always watching. I'm still sharp as the diamonds Rebecca tried to steal. And if anyone thinks they can take advantage of this old woman again, they're welcome to try. I've already proven that some things are worth more than money. Truth is one of them. Justice is another. And the look on Rebecca's face when she realized she'd been caught, that was priceless.